Let's get ready to start another episode of Miami Cop Talk. Welcome to another episode of Miami Cop Talk. With me is my partner and co-host, Robert Asencio, and we have a special guest. Robert, welcome. You want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. As always, it's an honor and a pleasure to introduce a man who probably deserves little introduction, but certainly a person that's been very instrumental in Miami-Dade police work for over 36 years, the chief of El Portal, the city of El Portal, Chief David Magnusson. Chief, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Chief, as we move forward in this conversation, we know that you are the chairperson for the COVID-19 committee for the Miami-Dade Association of Chiefs of Police, and that's a hot topic that we want to discuss on today's Miami Cop Talk. But before we get into that, can you just, for our listeners and those watching, give a little background on who you are and your credentials? You're not a Johnny-come-lately in law enforcement, like Robert said, 36 years. Just let the viewers know that you're speaking from a place of knowledge.
Sure. I did 30 years with the City of Miami Police Department. I retired as a major. From there, I became chief of police out in Havelock, North Carolina, which is home to any Marines out there, the Cherry Point Air Station, Marine Air Station. I was there for 3 years. My wife and I, we came back because we missed the traffic here in South Florida. And, after getting me on back, I was able to get the thing with the village of El Portal, get the job there. They had a chief's opening. I put in for it and I got it. And it's a small agency. Havelock was a medium-sized agency, not a large one. But in a military town, it had a whole new set of paradigms there. It was very interesting for law enforcement there in a military town. But it's a challenge in a small agency for a variety of reasons, which the village of El Portal is. It's a small agency. We use reserves. We use then full-time officers. And I say it's a challenge because as we segue into COVID later, you can't afford to lose people. You have a very thin line of how many people you can lose for one reason or other before it becomes a major issue in serving the community. So that's been a challenge, certainly throughout a pandemic. It's been a bigger challenge. And, just when you thought, to use an old Godfatherism, just when you thought you were out, they drag you back in. Well, maybe now with this other wave, whatever you want to call it, second, third, fourth wave, whatever it is, it just has to be taken extremely seriously right now because it's coming back with a vengeance.
So, Chief, yes, absolutely. So you may be the chief of a small agency in Dade County, but you are playing a critical role across the county as the chairman of the COVID-19, as we call it, we call it the Dade Chiefs Association. So you're advising all chiefs on this very important matter. So let's go right into COVID-19 and specifically the variant and where we're at today. Let's not politicize this. Let's get right into the meat of the issue. This is a safety issue, a safety to life issue. What can you tell our audience about the variant, where we're at in Dade County, and what do we need to do?
Well, I can tell you, at the end of May, the positivity rate in Miami-Dade County was about 2.8. I can tell you as of last week, it was 7.4. Now, in the middle of last year, 7.4, you would have taken it. You just say, great, that's a great number. But now when you've dropped it down so low and now it's inching up, I mean, it's doubling, more than doubling. I suspect, and I'm telling you, we're going to draw nearer to that 10% magic number, which everybody should sit up straight and pay big attention to. It's inching up. There's no reason to believe at this point anything's going to keep it from doing it unless things change. Things have to change. Vaccines. There's a number of things.
For perspective, for our viewers' perspective, when you say 7% or 2.5% or even 10%, that's of the population, right? And in a county with over 2 million residents,
right? That
is a significant number of people.
It's a significant number of people, but also you want to look at something that's maybe off this. Move that aside a minute. Hospitalization rates. Sit up a little straighter when you start hearing hospitals start taking protocols that they did away with because things got better and now they're putting them back in place. This is the little things that anybody, whether it's police, whether it's citizens, what have you. And again, police are just a microcosm of the community anyway. When you start seeing these things being put in place, these be aware of sort of things like JMH just did the other day, you need to really pay attention. And sadly, I don't think enough people are paying attention. And it's not to me to preach. I don't want to preach. It may be to persuade. Maybe I prefer to call it that way. I'm not trying to preach to anybody, but sometimes you got to look at what's going on around you and take a really good look at things that are changing in the community, that other areas are now shoring up. So their employees, their doctors, their nurses don't contract it. And you're going to see more hospitals following suit, I have no doubt, within the next week or two.
Chief, and you just said you don't want to preach, and we don't want to preach on Miami Cop Top, but we want to inform people. And I would say if we could speak to our fellow brothers and sisters in law enforcement again, you've been tasked to head the COVID-19 committee by Dade chiefs for a reason. And, El Portal, we talk about El Portal, people that may not know where El Portal is, strategically between the city of Miami, Miami Shores, North Miami, it is the county, it is surrounded by, the entire Miami-Dade community, if you really want to look at it. It is a strategic little village, but it is surrounded. So using that as an analogy, when you surround yourself by people and, you don't know if they've been vaccinated or not, or if they're carriers or whatever the case may be, from a law enforcement perspective, I want to be ready. Whatever, situational awareness, officer safety. We speak that all the time in our training. I'm ITW, you know how it works. So officer safety. I'm vaccinated. If I were out on the road, I would want to be vaccinated because I don't know who I'm going to be coming in contact with, unless I'm going to be wearing a mask and glove every single day, every moment of the day, but speak to your fellow, law enforcement brothers and sisters, about the importance of getting ready for something that may come your way.
Well, right now you have the ability to, even if you do catch it, to minimize the effects of what it's going to do to you. Now, I know a lot of my law enforcement brothers and sisters, some of them very good friends, they just think a little differently than I, and they constantly send me, or they bombard me, so to speak, with information about the shot is not good. The shot is it causes problems. And I would just ask those people, research that a little further. Anybody can put out misinformation and hide it under the disguise of a medical professional. Research it further. My research is coming from journals such as the New England Journal of Medicine and a couple scholarly articles from well-respected people in their field. I don't know what you're sending or where it's coming from. I would just say the best way to train, the best way to better yourself is get that info and research it further and see where it came from. Don't take everything on face value. Now, there will be those that'll say, well, yeah, but you're taking it on face value, believing in the vaccine. And I would say, yeah, but you got a whole array of science behind it. And I think it's time to bring science back into it. That's not a dirty word. And see where we're going with this, because right now it mutated. Right now it's affecting younger people than it did last year. It's a different variant. We don't know if it's going to mutate further and who it's going to attack more going down the future. But then also you have the asymptomatic. The beauty of flu, if you want to call it a beauty, is when somebody has the flu, darn well they got the flu. You just know it. Nobody's walking around straight up. They're walking like they got hit by a truck. If you happen to catch them outside, which hopefully you wouldn't. This isn't the case with COVID. So you can feel fine. You could be walking around. You can be doing all these things, coming in, with abuelita, having a good time with the kids. And now you're giving it to them. That above anything else, because a lot of the people I know have come in contact. They said they feel great. They feel good. They have it. They didn't know how they got it. But this is a way not just to protect yourself, protect your family. And unfortunately, again, I say law enforcement, we're a microcosm of the community we serve, as well we should be. That's what we do. This is our occupation, but we're part of the community. The younger adults don't seem to want to get the vaccine. I can talk about my own children. I can talk about my friends' children that are the same age. They're late 20s, 30s. I mean, they don't want to get it. And, you can have the discussion around the table and they're just adamant. Oh, I'm not getting it. I don't know why. I mean, now, again, Some will say, yeah, you get the shot. If you want to get it, you get it. If you want to wear a mask, you wear the mask.
Right.
And I'm saying that's all fine and good, but for this to go away, we all have to get on board here, because it's not going to go away this way. Because a lot of people did do very well in Miami-Dade County. A lot of people did get the vaccine, just not enough. And look at the state of Florida and Arkansas are leading the country in these COVID incidents right now with the variant.
It's interesting.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's interesting you point out that history repeats itself, right? So offline, you mentioned about the Spanish flu, the great influenza, 1919. The irony is that it's believed, it's traced that the origin of that infection that was global pandemic, that led to global pandemic, was here in the U.S., Haskell County, Kansas, I believe.
That's right.
That's where it's believed ground zero was, right? And then we saw back then the waves. And the interesting thing is that just like you did now, you saw people originally, got sick, some people died. There was a peak, and then there was a lull, and then it peaked again.
Correct.
Just when the people began to let the guards down, the pandemic struck again. The interesting thing is that if we know about viruses, we know that the main purpose of a virus is to mutate itself. It's to survive, and it does everything to accomplish that by changing its form, adapting, and in essence becoming stronger. Today we hear about the Colombian variant, right? So it's not just the variant. Now you have the Colombian variant. We've seen other forms of the virus mutate itself. So the reality is that it's here. But again, the standards that were employed, that's the interesting thing, is that some of the standards that were created back in 1920 are still in place, which common sense, hygiene, wash your hands, social distance, wear your mask. And now we have the added advantage in medicine, evolution of medicine, with regard to vaccination. Can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are? Not just get vaccinated, because we know, what is it? An ounce of prevention equals what?
Pound of
a
cure.
Pound of cure.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just like any little bit of prevention can lead to you staying alive. But can you talk a little bit about advice for our brothers and sisters in law enforcement, for your fellow chiefs, since you sit on the committee that advises Dade chiefs, what your thoughts are, what your suggestions, what your recommendations are?
Going back to the mask a minute, going back to 1918, 19, they had the same issues then. People didn't want to wear them. It's no different when you say history repeats itself. And then there were things going on that brought people together. You had the Liberty War Bond Parade in Philadelphia, and it went off the deep end there in the middle of a pandemic. They had a parade because they were pushing for World War I, which was only going to end 2 months later anyway, but they didn't know that at the time. And it just flew off the deep end. And I say that for the same reason that precautions should have been back then in place, that you don't have these mass gatherings. We learned a little better in 2020. I think we did. I think it was some rough rides, but I think all in all, I think the state, Miami-Dade County, did fantastic. The nation did well in getting it under. Then the vaccine comes rolling in, and things are looking good. But like everything else, it's a 12-round fight. And after 11 rounds, if you think you want that to fight one, I can show you a whole bunch of fights where the guy got dropped in the final round and lost the fight. I think we got a little cocky as a whole, as a society. I think we got a little arrogant. It wasn't over. And as a result, when was the last time you heard somebody counting out loud to 20 when they're washing their hands? Everybody did that at the beginning because it was important. It was good information. Nobody does it anymore. Nobody thought twice about wearing a mask. Now try to have them wear the mask. I know in the El Portal Police Department / Village Hall, we've gone back to inside. You put the mask back on. That's that ounce of prevention right now to get going, to anticipate things. What I would tell the chiefs, what I would tell the officers, first of all, you have an opportunity. There is something there. Research and do what you can. Get all the information. The nation, aside from Russia, this nation per capita has the highest vaccine refusal rate in the world. Think about that. We have probably the most vaccines available. We have the highest refusal. Now, some would argue on one hand, well, that's the liberty we have, perhaps. You may argue on the other side, I don't know if it's the wisest thing to be doing. What you have to tell the chief, listen, it's a police department. You have to be at your best. You don't want people going down for the count, with illness or having to quarantine, for 2 or 3 weeks. It becomes a logistical problem. I know a lot of agencies, went through it in 2020. We did, but fortunately for us, we had 12 out of 20 were affected by it. Fortunately for us, it was one got better, it wasn't all at the same time. It was almost like scheduling a vacation. We could work through it. Had it been all at the same time, we would have had a problem. If there's enough going down in a medium-sized department, you're going to have a problem. I think the answer is educate. Just educate people. I think we need to bring those people out in public service announcements, those that were adamantly against the vaccine and now for whatever reason have changed. And now they're telling everybody, yes, you get the vaccine, get the vaccine. These are the people with the wisdom to persuade other people, because, maybe they can't use me per se, because I've always thought the vaccine was the way to go. But you bring somebody in that was very much against it for whatever reason, and now they realize they were wrong. That carries a lot of weight. And I think hopefully that something gets generated, not just locally, but through the state, but the whole country. Like they have the Florida no smoke ads that are very effective that you see on TV. That would go a long way. Again, you're not going to be able to tweet from other officers from other departments, and they're just flat out, I'm not getting it. I don't believe in it. I'm not getting it. So, you're just going to have to persuade, and you're going to have to do it with facts. It sounds a lot easier said than done, but probably that's the only way it's going to happen, or else it would have happened already.
Well, Chief, I'll say this, again, from my perspective, I believe in safety first, and again, not to, harp on the issue, but we have officers that want, they want a vest. They want latex gloves. They want a CPR mask. They want all these things. They want all these measures to be able to protect themselves, when it's a field force time, gas mask, you name it. So if there's a added measure out there to potentially protect you, would you not want to better be safe than sorry? The way I see it is, I understand, and I'm not trying to infringe or influence anybody to give up their liberties or anything like that. But from a law enforcement perspective, I would say you want to be safe. You want to make sure that you don't take something home to your family. You want to be safe. You want to be able to provide for your family. So speaking on that, what do you have the numbers? I know I was looking at the Officer Down Memorial page. There are a lot of officers that have lost their lives to COVID. Do you have those stats relatively? I know everyone can research them and this and the other, but what are the numbers? I know Florida has been hit. I know California has probably been hit the hardest. But if you are concerned about being shot at as a police officer out there, you should be more concerned with contracting, COVID. You got a greater chance of getting COVID than getting shot at. So what are the numbers, if you can speak to that?
I don't have the exact numbers. That's something I can research and get to. I know there's been a lot of officers throughout the country. But going back to something you said about the vest. Now, most agencies, they don't have a mandatory wear. If you get a grant, you do. And we're putting in for grants, and now we have a mandatory wear policy. The mask for the CPR mask, the safety mask. Well, here's the difference. If that was politicized, the way the vaccine was, you'd have half the people not wearing the mask. This from the get-go has been, and I've been hammering away. It's been politicized. Shouldn't have been. This is a health issue, and again, as a microcosm of the community we serve, police are very opinionated. They hold very true to their beliefs, and that's fine. We can agree to disagree on certain things. They're still my brothers and sisters. I love them to death. I just think I'm on the right side of history with this, and they will argue they believe they're on the right side of history. Either way, whatever's going on right now, the progression of this COVID, it's not getting better. And I don't want to hear the stats, because technically, if you want to look at stats, we lose a number of officers each year, police memorial, that die in the line of duty, whether gunned down or a traffic accident. But if you want to use those stats on the overall scheme of things, for every officer in this nation. If you want to use those stats, then you would say statistically, it's not dangerous. Statistically, well,
Correct.
when you're out there every day, you don't know which one that's going to be. I tell people too, they talk about 1-2%. I say, you take 2% and you fill up the Rose Bowl. You take 2% of the 108,000. I mean, I'm not good in math and I don't have my calculator with me, but you take just 2%. Now you point out to me in that crowd, which of those 2% are going to die? Tell me, because, and it becomes a little bit more personal. So what I don't want to hear are the numbers where the statistics are so low, because that's a tried and true argument that's wearing thin now. It doesn't matter. Suppose they're your grandparents, suppose they're your parents, suppose it's your kid. I mean, there's a way to prevent this. And so again, we're talking about the numbers. The numbers are high for law enforcement. They are high because we come in contact with these people. And a lot of times we don't have the luxury. At the beginning, you'd have more people riding around with stuff, fully geared up as best you can, but we get deployed from the field. And if it's an in-progress call, you may throw the mask on. You're not going to do everything else. You're not going to do everything. It's just the nature of the beast is you got to get there. You want to confront whatever, this issue is. An in-progress robbery, in-progress burglary. You're not going to stop somewhere and put all the stuff. It's just not going to happen. And in 85-degree heat, you're not riding with that all day. I mean, let's be truthful about it. So there are ways, you can safeguard yourself. And again, it's like the vest. It's like the mask. I mean, there's no difference, except somebody would argue with me now and say, yeah, but I'm injecting something into my body. It is different.
Well, I think you bring up a very good point, Chief, because the example you just gave or you alluded to, I mean, we've all run after subjects, right? We've all been in progress calls. You have a subject flees from the scene. The officer runs after them. You catch them. You're sweating. There's, spit being put out all over the place. If you're not vaccinated, that layer of protection is that much less. And at a time, and you're not going to bail out of the car to chase a subject with your mask on. Chances are you're not going to do that. Chances are you're not going to run a block or 2 blocks or however distance you run with your mask on. These are high liability engaging situations. You hands on with someone, chances are if they're sick, you're going to get sick. So you bring out great point. When you mentioned about validators, right? People who were initially against the vaccination, the precautionary measures. I can think of the New Jersey governor, Chris Christie, who, after he came down with COVID initially, and after he was hospitalized in critical condition, he's now a proponent of not just safeguarding the measure, utilizing the measures, but also vaccination. And one last thing that we must point out is that during the initial COVID spike in the state of Florida, Dade County was the number one, literally ground zero for the amount of viruses spread and positivity, right? So logic would have it that most likely Dade County will be very close to ground zero one more time, God forbid, but I think we're headed that way. Because the amount of people we have, it's a port of entry from people from all over the world who may not be as protected as we are. So you bring up some very, very valid points. Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you this too. I mean, I know a couple decades ago, there was one vaccine that the cops were getting. Nobody argued about it. And it's the same thing you were saying. We're hands-on with people. We're hands-on. The hepatitis.
Correct.
It didn't get politicized. And so, there were a few that didn't get the vaccine. There were a few they had to get twice, like me, because it didn't hold the first time. But you felt good after you got it, that you were safeguarding your family, the hepatitis vaccine. It was great. This is the best thing, since sliced bread. This is, you don't think twice about it. There's your difference. It wasn't politicized. And really, I'm glad there are people like Chris Christie out there, other people you have. Just recently, Mr. Hannity comes out and says, get the vaccine. Good. I mean, better late than never, but good. And I think this has got to be the push throughout this nation, because it's going to get progressively worse. Now, I've been called it some. I've been also called R, with R-rated addiction. You're just stirring the pot, so to speak. You're an alarmist, and I wouldn't call myself an alarmist. If you see something coming your way and you want people to be cautious, take caution, heed the warning, I think that sort of makes me intelligent. I don't think it makes me an alarmist.
I would call you a realist.
And sometimes realism is alarming. And so with that in mind, unless this goes away right away and it makes an about face and the rates drop again and across the country, which I don't think is going to happen, I think the nation as a whole, and let's just define for the law enforcement community, they need to rethink a few things. That's all. They've had an opinion on something, and I think as it goes left, you need to know how to counter that, and just research more and more and get the information and listen to people that thought the same way and now they didn't find out why. I think that's the best thing I can tell people to do.
I agree with you, Chief. And for those listening or watching, we're on Miami Cop Talk, and we're talking about COVID-19 with the chair of the COVID-19 committee from Miami-Dade Chiefs. Now, I will say this: you brought up, and Robert brought up Governor Christie and Hannity. Listen, on both sides of the aisles, I'm going to talk to all my brothers and sisters out there. President Biden says to get vaccinated. Ex-President Trump says to get vaccinated. They're on both. Ivanka Trump got vaccinated. So the fact of the matter is, and everyone was getting their selfie shot, getting the vaccine. On both sides of the aisle, we shouldn't politicize safety and health. Unfortunately, that happens quite often. We should not politicize policing and public safety. Unfortunately, that happens. So I agree with you. People need to do their own research. People need to be safe. I respect those that want to make their own decisions and say, I don't want to get vaccinated, but they need to weigh out their options, especially if they're first responders on the front lines. And I personally would recommend that if you're a first responder on the front lines dealing with the general public, you don't know what you're coming in contact with. And you brought up a very good point with the hepatitis shots that were given to all law enforcement in the community years ago. I'm fully aware of that. And you're right. As we get ready to close, Chief, is there any parting message, any information you want to give to our listeners and our viewers? And I want to thank you again for your service. Thank you for what you're doing. You have a tough task, informing people, keeping them abreast of what's going on with COVID, especially when they're resistant with all the whatever's going on out there.
Well, you just want to get that point across and give as much information as you can. The advice I would give out there is listen to the professionals. There's a wide array of brilliant health officials that are here in the community and throughout the nation. Listen to them and be skeptical if something just seems outlandish all of a sudden. I'm not going to push for mandates on officers to get it. That's a private decision. I'm not for those type of mandates. I think moving forward, we should probably going to have to go back to mask inside for sure. But you just got to listen to the experts in the field and take your notes, research it further. This is a pandemic. I mean, the last bad one we had was in 1918. This is not over yet. And I think, we started gloating it after round 11, and now we better figure out how to cover up and sustain this final round here, if this is the final round, because the Delta variant seems to mean business. And this is nothing to turn your head back away from. I mean, this is something that you got to take extremely serious, just like we did in the middle of 2020. There's no different here. I think we opened up a Pandora's box now, and now getting everybody back in that box is going to be a challenge. But this is about health. It's about not just your health or my health, but our parents, our grandparents, our children. It's certainly not worth the gamble. You need to do what you can to safeguard yourself, and there's something there. There's something there that will assist you. Have an open mind and just ask questions. but don't be adamant against something without knowing everything.
Yeah, I think the best reference here is envision yourself the possibility of being intubated because you can't breathe, you're apoxic. Envision yourself in the hospital where your loved ones can't come to see you, where you're alone at the mercy of staff that, well-intentioned as they may be, well-educated, top-notch staff that we have in the hospitals locally, caring for you, that are maxed to the most. If you want to be alone, if you want to be intubated, if you want to be sick, or your family member, then maybe you don't consider doing the research, right? But if you don't, and you love your family members and you love yourself, you want to prevent from being sick, alone, or dying, you may want to do the research. I totally agree with you, Chief. Look forward to having more conversations with you. Look forward to getting you online, hopefully with the Dade Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Peter Page. Once again, I think that, you know, in your position, man, I just am so proud to have you on here because you are definitely going above and beyond the call of duty to protect and serve our community. Chief, I can't thank you enough. Raul, you want to close it out?
Again, Chief, thank you. You've been listening to Miami Cop Talk. Thank you for joining us. And until next time.
You have been listening to Miami Cop Talk. We hope you have enjoyed this episode and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com to get the latest on all our broadcasts. We want to thank our partners and sponsors that have made Miami Cop Talk possible. And on behalf of Robert Asencio and Raul Correa, we want to thank you for listening to Miami Cop Talk. Stay connected and visit us at MiamiCopTalk.com.